So thank you for coming today. For those of you who were in Ryan's session yesterday, this is really part two. If you missed Ryan's session, it was really about getting the data to Splunk. How do we move from this legacy approach, whether it's Tivoli, HP, BMC, whatever it is, how do we move from that legacy approach of being event-driven to a more proactive, strategic direction where we're moving away from just looking at events and be more priority-driven. So this is part two of that. If you missed part one, the sessions will be available in about a week on our portal page. So just FYI. So for those of you who don't know me, I've met a lot of you in this room. My name is Emily Duncan, and I am on the IT market specialist team. I'm an architect, so I've been in the event management and monitoring space for almost 25 years, so that totally shows how old I am. I've touched almost every monitoring tool out there, integrated it, used it, kicked it, cursed at it, you name it, I've done it. So I came to Splunk about 2 years ago. I came from a different tool called Moogsoft, and before that I was from BMC Software. So Splunk 2 years, so happy to be here today. And Ryan is actually from one of my customers that I've had the pleasure of working with for almost a year now. Mm-hmm. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ryan. I have been working on Splunk stuff for about 2.5, 3 years now. I work for TIAA. Or probably maybe some of you are familiar with TIAA CREF. They dropped the CREF branding, And my background is in application performance management stuff, and then I learned Splunk and haven't looked back, so.
What's some of the tools that you touched before you came to TIAA?
Oh, man. So my specialty was in CA. I would work for CA Technologies doing Wiley or CA APM, CEM, I don't know, a lot of the CA suite.
So he's a great background, and we're going to put his boss on the spot here, June, who has a great team, a very well-rounded team. So people with an app background, people with an infrastructure monitoring background, it makes a really great team. So normal forward-looking statements, we will probably discuss some things that are actually released today, and some things that are going to be coming in the product. So what we're going to cover, so basically the history of legacy tools at TIAA, what they were using, why they were using them, why they want to move away from them, and really what is the path, not necessarily like, okay, great, now we made the decision to move away, but really, what does that look like, right? What is that, we make the decision that now we're going to do this, right? What does that look like? What is the blueprint? Where do we start? How long does it take? Things like that. Also, something that is very important and that I actually learned from TIAA is you can't just expect people to change. You have to give them a reason to embrace the change. So that's a piece that a lot of us forget to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Ryan's going to talk about how they're doing that at TIAA and ultimately the outcomes, where you can expect to be, some of the goals, and we'll get started. So we will have a Q&A after. So it's pretty obvious why we call them dinosaurs, right? They roamed the earth a long time ago. They were big and bulky, and they ruled the world, and yet you only had a few. You were either, the person who dominated, the dinosaur who dominated, or you got eaten. Right? So you didn't have a lot of choices in vendor tools, right? So you picked these legacy vendors and you got locked in, right? God, I've been doing this for this long. How the heck do I get away from it, right? It's incredibly difficult to not just scrap stuff and start doing something new. It's lock-in, right? Really, it is. So I'm going to let Ryan take this part. So a little bit about the past at TIAA. So.
Yeah, so our background and kind of what we're still in the process of doing is getting rid of the IBM Netcool Omnibus Impact kind of suite there, ITM, and It took us about like 2 years or so to like start the process of getting rid of all of our ITM agents to actually getting rid of them. And then this is going to be a much more abbreviated version of my talk from yesterday. So if you want more detail about how we went around and did that, then you can certainly go watch that. But the short of it is that for primarily cost reasons, I think we saved about $2.5 million a year for that. Just to move all of that data from ITM and the aggregation and stuff from there to Splunk, and starting to leverage ITSI has been our process. So.
Can you tell me a little bit about the way that your monitoring works? You know, who decides what gets alerted on? Who does it go to? Who works on it? What is it that they can see? You know, can they see what services are impacted? The past. Can you give them a little bit on what that looks like?
Sure. So, you know, in the past, there's kind of a default set of monitors. So people have log monitors and, you know, all of the OS level stuff, CPU, memory, disk, a lot of the kind of standard ITM suite. And that was just kind of told to you, this is what you're monitoring. So nowadays, having the data inside of Splunk, people can search through it. They can actually find the things that are meaningful to them and request like to be alerting on that stuff.
So one of the important steps, you know, that even when I started working with TIAA that I said is when you start down this path, you're like, hey, we're going to replace these tools, right? Okay, there's this big modernization project. And one of the things as people on monitoring teams, tools teams, that we often forget to do is go to the people who rely on that data to do their job. I always say, who has the eyes in the glass? Who's looking at the event on the screen? Who relies on that alert to do their job? Because we can't just assume that we can swap them out, right? Hey, stop looking there, start looking here, because there may be really unique use cases that somebody may have, a one-off, right, that they're using those tools for. And are you just going to say, yeah, sorry, can't do that? Or are you going to find a way to give them what they need in a different way? So that's extremely important when you're going down this path, that you understand how people are using the tools. It can't just be a rip and replace. Even it can't just be a migration. It's not just a migration of technology, it's a migration of mindset. So that's something that Ryan and his team have done pretty well. So we can just talk briefly about what it looks like. What was okay, hey, stop looking here, looking here. What was that method that you used?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is that for most people you get, like Emily was saying, like locked into a certain way that you're looking at things, and it's scary to say, okay, I'm going to start looking over here now because you're just not familiar with it. You don't understand why we're making the change necessarily. So for us, the biggest thing was initially finding out how people are currently working, what the gaps are in the way that they're working, and then how the new solution addresses those gaps. And then they're like, oh, wow, look at all of this new value. That's a reason to change. Having that value, I think, is a really key part. Right.
And I will give you a warning. So in the types of jobs that we have, we're like this service desk, right? Where people come in and they ask for things, and we give them to them. Oh, you need to see that data? Okay, cool. You need to be set that threshold? Okay, cool. You need me to do this for you? Okay, cool. And we forget that our job, you know, and I've been on a monitoring team, so I know what that feels like, but our job is to be a trusted advisor. Our job is to say, why? Why do you need that? Why do you need to see it that way? Do you need it that way because the data is related? Or do you need it that way because that's the way you work? That is a really important question to ask, because if the data is related, that's correlation. I can do that, right? Whether it's through, you know, aggregation policies, whether it's through SME knowledge, whether it's through smart mode, which is machine learning. But if you're telling me it's because the way you work, that's a view. That's a view, that's a dashboard. That's your perception of the way it needs to be. And guess what? You can do that so easily. That doesn't have to fall on me as your Splunk admin. So it's really important to always ask why. Why do you need it that way? And TIAA is still down that path, right? As you start to move those people away from the old to the new, it's just natural that people push back. And I find that even us who are trying to encourage people to change, even we give them so many options and reasons not to have to change. Because we don't want to be the bad guy. It creates more work on us. It's definitely more pressure. But do yourself a favor. And as you're bringing them over to the, okay, look here, at the same exact time, start building out where you want them to be, the path you want them to follow. Don't create more work for yourselves, because you can say, hey, here you go. This is the way you worked. Here it is now. But FYI, here's another way. And that's what he's talking about is when you say, here's an and also, people will naturally gravitate to things that make their job easier, which in turn makes your job easier. So don't forget that part. So where do you start, right? It's a lot about the data. Sorry, I forgot my little animations here, right? So number one, especially for TIAA, is what data is over here? I got to put the data here. Again, it is not a, hey, turn this one down, turn this one up. It's a side by side. We're running side by side. So a lot of you that I've worked with, one thing I say is, hey, whatever's going over here, this thing you want to go away, whatever's going there, got to go to Splunk. Because you can't give somebody half of what they used to look at. The other thing where you want to start is, what can't they see? So I know a lot of you who have TrueSight, your OMI tools, Netcool Omnibus. You pick and choose where things are going to go. Hey, you know what? The AppD team, they look at their stuff. I don't need to send that to Omnibus because that's traps and nobody likes traps. So they can just keep looking at their stuff. But every time we do that, oh, SolarWinds, Network Team, Spectrum, you can keep looking at your crap. You don't need to send that to me. Every time we do that, the walls between data go higher, but the walls between collaboration go even taller. So you're actually hurting yourself by allowing them to continue to move down a path where not everybody can see that data. So when you're talking about where to start, number one is, what's already going here? I'm gonna start there, right? What's going here? I gotta also get it right here. And then, as they did, they built out that view where people can start going, okay, I'm gonna look over here, and then you can start taking down the other side. Okay, so you wanna talk a little bit how you guys did that, got the data in, what it looks like for your customers now?
Yeah, sure. So honestly for us, I think that was one of the most challenging pieces, because identifying all of the data that you have is somewhat of a challenge to be able to say, especially with some of these legacy tools, how do we actually see everything that we are monitoring? In ITM, you've got log monitors, and those are really easy things to say, okay, we know all the logs. We can pull that into Splunk right away, but then all of the CPU, memory disk, all of those things, we use Unix TAs for, the Windows TAs for, and for some stuff like process monitors, for example, was some stuff that we had to build custom. We had to find a way to actually do process monitoring and get that data into Splunk a different way. So it was a variety of different approaches that we had to take in order to get it all in there, but it was absolutely worth it.
And then it isn't just about getting the data there. Right? So, it would be awesome if all app developers had standards in logging and field names. What a perfect world we would live in, right? If everybody picked a standard and stuck with it, but it just isn't so. So when we talk about, especially in event management, it's, okay, how are we gonna enrich that data? Where are we gonna get that from? Is that going to be, your CMDB, your ITSM tool of choice, a spreadsheet that lives on somebody's desktop? What's that going to be? What is going to be the aggregator of all that data? And TIAA is actually, I'll let you just talk about where your aggregation point is now and where it's going to go.
Sure. So right now, we still have Netco Omnibus as our aggregation piece, but it is going to go to ITSI. And the way that we do that is having all of the events inside of Splunk, essentially the things that you want to alert on, we would write to a summary index. And then inside of ITSI, you've got correlation searches that will read from that summary index. And we have like one correlation search per event source, essentially, or event type. And it will read from that summary index and automatically create the notable events for those. And then once you've got the ITSI notable events, you can group those together based on, however you want to, but we do it by the event type and basically create the episodes from there, or the notable event groups as they used to be. So that's the aggregation piece. So you're not creating an incident for every single thing. You would group them together and then drive action from the group.
How many people in here have ever gotten an alert, an event on a screen, and they read it and they knew exactly what was wrong because it was so filled with information? Okay, one person, so good job, right? Generally not. What do? We keep looking. What's surrounding it? What else is happening? Let me look at these messages. How about over here, right? And the wheels start turning. The thing is that if you enrich your data properly, naming conventions 1 or 6, CMDB, regexing things out, right? Hey, here's part of a message that actually tells me things about the message. Where are you located? What do you do? What's your role? What came before you? So this is one thing that I love data, and I don't like to work harder. So I like to let the data lead me. So when you are getting data in and you're trying to decide, is it good enough? What should I add to add enrichment? You should look for things in your data that tell you what's your reason for being. Are you app server, database, web server, DNS, authentication? Because all of those things, it's in your data. It's not from a CMDB. It's not from somebody's head. It's not from a CSV. It's actually in the data. So if you don't know what to look for, so say you're saying, oh, you know what, my network team, they want to have all of their network devices correlated, but I don't really know anything about network. Don't be afraid to talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask, what is it that you look at to determine if something's good or bad? So remember I said to go out and talk to people and say, how do you use this? So if you do it properly, right? I haven't even started anything. I'm going out, I'm talking to my people, I'm saying, hey, what are the tools you're using? And the next question I say, so when you get alerts, what fields are you looking at? What keywords? What makes you go to that run book and go, oh, there it is. I got to send this to so-and-so. Oh, that's an application. Those become not only the things that you're going to correlate by, they will become your KPIs, your key performance indicators. So for those of you who are like me, and I hate to go out and talk to 10 people and say, hey, what's important to you? I'm going to get 20 different answers. I would rather you be really direct, and when you do your job, which fields do you look at to know something is wrong, and where do I look next? Those are the things you correlate by. Those can be your KPIs. And then the very next question that you're going to ask to determine, am I going to leave this an event, or am I going to make this something I measure? This is what you say. Does it matter every single time it happens? Hey, when CPU is at 95%, do you drop everything? Because it matters every single time CPU is at 95%. If you got people that are saying yes, they need a little better training, right? Because it doesn't. So if the answers are, no, it doesn't matter every time, it matters every 10 times, that's a KPI. Okay? That's a KPI, that's not an event. So what you're doing as you're learning and you're discovering how people are doing this is you are building a plan to make them less event-driven. So remember I said, give them the, hey, this is what I'm used to looking at, but give them the and also. This is your and also. This is what reduces noise. It is not just about deduplicating. It is not just about correlating. It's about taking away things that are not actionable and making them actionable. So very important that you don't miss that step. So that's kind of where they are now, right? They're gonna flip over to ITSI. They are correlating some of their events together, not through machine learning, through service matter expertise, because again, that's how they work. So how are you doing some of those correlations? What do some of those rules look like?
Oh man, I mean, right now it's usually based off of some identifier in the field that we specifically flag, and then we know that will map to a specific, ServiceNow assignment group, and we route that automatically, or we'll do a CMDB lookup based on like the server. So we either have some kind of manually defined mapping, or we have kind of an automated lookup, but the CMDB lookup that we do have is not perfect, which is why we have that kind of overwrite capacity.
So that's another really important point, is everybody wants to do AIOps. Right? How many of you knew, how many people in here have actually gone out and Googled AIOps? Show of hands. How many still have absolutely no idea what the hell AIOps is? So, we all want to do better. We want to get the buzzwords and machine learning and, hey, it's magic and it's a unicorn and you're going to solve all of my problems. The problem is that machine learning algorithms are built on patterns. Okay, they're built on patterns, and people don't work that way. Do you want them to? Absolutely. But I'm going to tell you what, if you go, yep, don't look over there, and hey, I turned on this machine learning, and it's grouped all these things together, and there you go. Go solve all the problems. They're going to be like, what the hell? That makes absolutely no sense. Why did it turn out that way? So what you have to do is what TIAA has done is give them what they're used to. So a lot of times it's looking up and saying, hey, what's the support group? Who's this go to? What's the Windows team? Okay, it's a Unix team. It's, an application. So it goes to this app team. Those are the places that you have to start. So the very first value add that you've given them is, instead of giving them 100 events on a screen that they have to sort through, sort by color, only look at red because who the hell has time to look at yellow? What you've done is you've given them an episode, which is a group of things that matter to them, but it's in one view. One view. They have a timeline, right? Well, how did that unfold? Who sent me these, right? Who should I look at first? But still, value. And literally minutes, right? It takes, on average, 10 minutes to create a correlation search, which is a search to go out and normalize field names. That's its only job. Deduplicate, yes, but its job is to normalize field names. Why do we want to normalize field names? Anybody? I mean, are all vendors, do they all use the word severity? Or status, or event message, or description, or, no. So correlation, machine learning, is looking at the similarities, the patterns, between text and category. So if I have a Windows machine that says severity, and I have a Unix machine that says status, how alike do you think those two things are? Not very. Definitely not in text. Maybe in category. They both have S, okay? So if I turn on machine learning and those make it together, why? So you must normalize field names. That is the only job of a correlation search. One per data source. Okay, Windows, Nix, SolarWinds, Apti, Dynatrace, those are correlation searches. And when I do that, the aggregation policy, the hey, how am I going to group these together? Do yourself a favor and start off with service matter expertise. Let me go look and see, is there a support group? Is there an application field? Do I know who to send this to because of something in my data, right? Not asking somebody. Start taking away the human perception, because that is honestly where we fail. What's your idea of what's important? How about you? How about back there? You're going to get different answers all the time. And who the hell can keep up with that? Right? It's like having a teenage daughter. Every day I ask her if she's happy. It depends on which day which direction the wind is blowing. Do not build that into your monitoring. So take things that are tangible and group on them. So the very first thing you've done, you've given them less to look at. They can still work the way they want. It starts to get easier. And guess what you're doing is you're actually learning the way they work. You're learning the data they look at. You're learning what's important to them because you ask them, which fields do you look at? So that alternate view that you're also going to do is, hey, I'm going to start turning on machine learning because they told me which fields are important. So when I go in and I say, hey, Splunk ITSI, go analyze all of the fields in these events, here are the ones I know are important because somebody told you they were. I don't care about hashtags. I don't care about any Splunk internal fields. I care about what people tell me they look at. Go analyze those and time, right? So linguistics, time, any topology built in there, locations and things like that, and analyze those for similarities and group those together as well. And there's my alternate view. Which one gets you closer? Put that in front of them. Which one gets you to root cause more quickly? The thing you will run into is people will say, I don't want to see all those other events. I'm on the database team. I don't give a crap about the network team's events. Okay, I'm on a Windows team. I look at OS stuff. I don't care about application metrics. I don't care. And that's where it goes back to, do I need to create some policy that groups things this way just because that's how you work? Or can I just make you a view? Can I just type in their database and all the database alerts come up and I save it as a view and boom, there you go. That's the way you need to go. Do not make your job harder. And FYI, what happens is, yeah, I see database alerts, but I see application alerts. Why is that? I see web server alerts. I see JVM stuff. Why do I see that? Because they're related, right? They're related. And people will naturally start to gravitate towards the, oh, yeah, that is a better way to do it. So when we're talking about goals, that's a really good one. Okay, so whenever we're talking about replacing things, I think it's really important to understand why. What is it that makes legacy monitoring tools extinct? So I came, like I said, a background of touching different monitoring tools. I spent the better part of my career at a vendor who got you about 60% of the way to where you actually needed to be. And if you wanted to go further, you had to buy another tool. It's a suite, but it's all sold separately. So, oh, you want to know impact? Let me go buy a different module for that. You want to tie that to your ITSM tool? Oh, I'm sorry, that's another module. You want to reduce your event noise? You want it to be correlated? Sorry, another module. Oh, you want to bring mainframe data in? Another module. You want to bring workload information in? Another module. And by the time you got done, you had about 15 different things that never really worked well together. That's legacy. That is not flexibility. And that is ultimately the number one reason that tools go extinct, right? Is because the more things you tell me I need to be able to do the things you promised me, the less flexible you become, the more risk you introduce, the harder it is to maintain, the more people it takes to upgrade, and so on and so on and so on. So that's number one, right? Is I can't keep doing things the same for everything because it's the way I've always done them. Environments are fluid. Cloud, on-prem, cloud apps, native cloud apps, not, right? Different types of things I need to get from them. They're always changing. So I want a solution that can change with it. right? Being able to change right alongside with your applications, with your infrastructure, that is what separates a legacy tool from one that's moving towards AIOps, right? Being able to impact. So years ago, when HP was still really big in the market, right, and they came out with these impact tools, and business process management, and CMDB, and all this cool stuff that was supposed to tie together and show you exactly how this was affecting your business. They didn't actually work for one really good reason. Because the people that built it had absolutely no idea what impact to a business looked like. Most IT people don't, right? Server 42 goes down, got to get it back up. Do I know what Server 42 does? Maybe. Do I know if Server 42 goes down, what that dollar impact is to somebody way higher than me? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So being able to take business relevant data, not from a server, not from an application, but business relevant data, right? Build things into my monitoring tools that tell me, hey, FYI, there's a bunch of users that can't log in to your website, your portal, and by the way, if that keeps going down, this is how much money, right? This is how much money that's costing your business. Important to know? Kind of. So legacy tools don't take that into effect. When they talk about impact, they talk about downstream impact, like dominoes. Okay, but impact isn't really just about infrastructure. It's about users, it's about applications, it's about experience, right? We're all mad with social media, right? And we get pissed off and boom, boom, boom. I got really pissed at Southwest because 3 trips in a row, they canceled or delayed my flights 3 times in a row on the same actual leg, right? Oh, here you go, run over here. Delayed, delayed, delayed. So I was really pissed because I wanted to go home. And I got on Twitter and I said, thanks Southwest, late again. That's all I said. About 15 minutes later, I got an email saying, oh, I'm so sorry, Emily Duncan, that you had a very bad experience. And it kind of freaked me out because I actually don't use my name on my Twitter account. I was like, what? Oh my God. Ooh, I got some love bucks out of it, right? So I got some free stuff. But the point is people have access to things to tell the world how bad you are at your job. Whether it's real, whether it's perception, we all have the methods, right? I'm gonna go tell everybody how much you suck. So being able to have platforms, solutions that can also take that into an account. Hey, maybe I find out my systems really suck before somebody picks up the phone because I'm looking at Twitter, right? I'm looking at people complain about me before anybody picks up the phone. Because if you're anything like me, so I have this really awesome internet provider. I live in Chicago. It's really awesome. And it's out almost every day. Kicks me off right in the middle of meetings, and I curse it and curse it and curse it and reboot my router and blah, blah, blah. And somebody says to me the other day, well, do you ever pick up the phone and call them? And I was like, no. Well, what did you do? Well, I just complained to you. I went on Twitter and said they suck. Why? Because people have become so okay with mediocre. Even though they're not really, they don't tell you, right? It takes them so long to pick up the phone and say, you suck, that by the time they've Twittered it out, things have really gone bad, right? They've not picked up the phone to tell you. So start listening in a different way. Start listening to where their outlet is. You need tools that can also pull that data in, right? So that I can tie that back to things that matter to our business. So that goes to ITSI, right? Take data from enterprise, from social media, from wherever it is you want to send it. Take it, correlate it, bring it together, and give it relevance. Relevance. That's what we need to give our data, is relevance. Not relevance, things that are relevant to you, but things that are relevant to the people that rely on the data to do their job. And those are sometimes all different things. But having a solution that can be that flexible to give you the type of relevance you need, that is critical in today's world. Okay. So, this makes me laugh because how many people in this room, probably a lot, still own a legacy monitoring tool? When I say legacy, you've been on it a long time. How many people stay on that tool because it's just easier than trying to figure out what the hell do I do from here? It's a lot of people, right? So we keep things around. Like I said, we learn to be okay with mediocre. We actually go buy little point tools that let us stay the same. I'll change a little bit, right? Like I'll go spend money on this one thing that just does event correlation. I can do event management better. I'll go buy that, but I'll keep all of these over here, right? I need to just be a better APM. Let me go buy another tool, okay? But we do that, and ultimately, we're doing that so that we can stay the same, so that we don't really have to change. It's too hard. So again, I talked about which ones will survive. So in your opinion, Ryan, what was the downfall of the Tivoli? Why, besides the money, right? What were the things it wasn't providing that were ultimately drivers to get away from it?
So I think one of the big reasons is domain expertise. A lot of us on the team, we had people leave, and we had to hire contractors and stuff to maintain it, to support it. I think that was probably a really big reason. Okay.
What about in the amounts of incidents that you're creating because of the way that legacy tool did its job?
Yeah, lots and lots of incidents,
right?
All the incidents.
So if you can't be flexible, if you can't get all the data that you need from various resources, here's another one, data source agnostic. So how many of you have ever integrated a data source into your legacy monitoring tool that had some proprietary language? Got to do it just this way, in this format, and nothing else. I spent years writing code in all different languages just so I could get data in one format. So data source agnostic is, don't care where you come from, don't care what format you're in, just give me your data. I will get you into Splunk. Super important. If you can't do that, that is a reason, like you said about people, they retire, they're not really spending a lot of money, developing these tools. People fall by the wayside, and there's new things that it just can't do anymore, right? There's data that just isn't in that format. So also identifies noise. How did you identify noise in Netcool?
I don't know. I don't think we did a good job of identifying the noise, honestly. I think we just suffered by routing a bunch of alert emails into an outbox like a folder in Outlook and never looking at it again.
What do you identify as noise? What is noise?
I mean, stuff that you can't act on.
Stuff you can't act on. Do any of you create events that you can't act on? Anybody? Yep. Do you ever get the feeling that you're being ignored? That you spend all this time creating events that you send to people that nobody ever looks at? Okay? Being able to identify noise, not just by deduplicating, but by understanding, this is anomaly detection, understanding what is common and what is not. Anomaly detection, right? Legacy tools don't have that. And being able, again, we talked about service views. Now, service is a thing that everyone has a different opinion of what a service should be. A service is a group of components that work together to provide a function. So it is not an application, unless it's a really large application that has a lot of moving parts. But in general, a service is not an application. A service is something I want to measure. Those are KPIs. It can be an IT service. It doesn't always have to be a business service. It could be shared IT, right? So one of the biggest misconceptions when I came to Splunk is everybody thought a service had to be business related. And coming from somebody who was on a database team, I said, I want to see a service too. I'm a database team. I want to see a database service. I have KPIs. I want to see what's impacted. I want to reduce noise. So just remember that when you're talking about services, it's not business related. In fact, if you want to get really quick time to value, build out shared IT. Because guess what you don't have to do when you build out shared IT until well down the path? You don't have to talk to people. You don't have to ask them, hey, what does this mean? Because remember what I said is, look at your data. I can tell you're a database server by the events you send me. I can tell you're a web server. I can tell that you're a JVM. I can tell what you do by the data that you send me. Let that lead you and get as far as you can and then go talk to people. Oh, and guess what happens when you do that? You're bringing them something already that's valuable. And you didn't have to ask them first, tell me what's important to you, let me go back and build it, let me put it in front of you again. No, you looked at the data, you take it to them and you say, hey, look what I found. How close am I? I do this all the time for customers. I have absolutely no idea, most of our customers, what the data is. I do a POV, I look at their data, I build out a service, I say, how'd I do? How close did I get? I usually get pretty damn close because I let the data lead me. I ask questions. What do you look at? What do these fields mean? Do you have a naming convention? How do you know location? Okay, just like that. I look at the data, I build some enrichment, right? I love regex. Don't regex in your correlation searches. Put it in a lookup table, but let the data lead you. Give people things that matter to them, especially shared IT, because I guarantee you they care. Network team, database team, application team, authentication team, Active Directory team, they care. You bring them value and guess what they do? They help you. They become your champions. They help you get the data that you need. Build your champions. And lastly, about the embrace the change, right, is learn what people need and give them something better. Help them understand what the path is to get to something better. So I did want to talk a little bit about all the marketing hype that we see out there. This is kind of a funny picture that I found out there, right? Dinosaur Rush, funded, 6 goals reached, and it reminds me of marketing in this space, right? AIOps. Like I said, if you Google it, you're going to get about, I don't know, maybe we're up to like 50 different vendors that tell you that they do it. And all of them, or I'd say a very small number of them, actually can achieve it. Right? So it makes me laugh because that's what I call fake news, right? That's what I call fake news. And how many of you have actually worked with one of those legacy vendors that run through, you know, it's like, okay, marketing decides, let's call it something else. Let's call it something else. Let's rebrand it. Let's change the colors. Let's call it something really cool that has a word in it that makes it seem like we do things differently. It's fake news, right? I don't care about marketing. Show me the money. Show me how it works, right? So don't be fooled by those things. Is actually see what it is. Does it take me away from where I was to where I want to be? So this is what it looks like after. So can you talk about your phase 2? Like, where is it that you want to go after you've got everybody looking here? Where do you want to go from there?
Sure. So right now we're really just using the event analytics side of ITSI, just correlation searches and aggregation policies, and that's basically it. The direction we really need to get to is building out the meaningful services and KPIs. The reason we're only doing the event analytics side right now is because, like Emily was saying, we've got to show people what they're used to first to get that level of comfort, replicating what we currently have. And then once they have that level of comfort, we can say, okay, now the thing that you've been looking at as an event that's not really an event, like see it as a KPI, see all of these things come together so that it bubbles up to a service. And if you're not like, you know, if a database goes down and it doesn't affect the service, like at the end of the day, maybe your DBA cares, but like the business owner doesn't care. Like, so that's one of those things that I'd like to get to is actually service level monitoring.
So sorry, like I talked too long and we went over time. So I just want to leave you with this because I tell people this all the time, right? I actually preach it to my kids. They get so tired of me saying this, right? Is just because that's all the way that you've always done it does absolutely not mean this is the way we should keep doing it. Do not get into that rut of ask and I'll give, right? Be the trusted advisor to your customers, right? Lastly, if you own ITSI, even if you don't, and you want to see, hey, what does this look like with our data? I encourage you to reach out to your IT specialist. Again, I'm on the IT specialist team. We have ones all around the world, actually, and we do these workshops where we do it with your data. Like I said, seeing is believing. Don't take the marketing blurb. Don't take the pretty graphics. Let us help prove it out to you. Okay? Any questions? And I'm going to actually go around and let you answer questions.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, we don't have a microphone. So. Oh, I can't. Actually, you have to. Cause
Yeah,
it's
that's fine. Well, I think I'm doing the same thing.
Sorry. Any questions out there? Oh, no, you don't get to ask a question. Mike, over there. Mike McGraw.
Hold on. I'm going to take this.
Hey, Ryan. Are you tied in with an IT service management solution for ticketing and event from that side?
Yeah, so we use ServiceNow. We've got the default ServiceNow TA or what the technical add-on, I forget what it's called. But that's the, we pretty much use the out-of-the-box integration for that. We pass in like a couple of extra flags because we've got some other integrations with ServiceNow, but yeah.
Just for everybody, in case you don't know, we have bidirectional integration with Remedy and ServiceNow and Sharewell. With ServiceNow, it's bidirectional. You can ingest all of your change and incident data. You can open incidents. You can work on an incident in ServiceNow. It is replicated in the comments field of episodes and vice versa. So it is bidirectional. No, it's a Remedy integration. Yeah, it's actually, I don't know if there is an app yet. Yeah. Do you know, Mike? Because you guys have Remedy. Is there a Remedy app? Yeah. Okay. Yes, it's your Splunk pace.
This is like maybe for you more. Have you made any efforts into having Splunk actually read the EIF format that's coming from Tivoli?
Yeah, so, sorry, my volume is all screwed up now, but we do that more as a post-processing thing to look at what has been created and to be able to analyze what our data sources that are actually alerting are, but we haven't really done much more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the newer stuff with ServiceNow doesn't work terribly well with the EIF. The formats aren't compatible unless you have a custom connector of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, we use NetCool and Omnibus to be our custom connector for that stuff.
We don't have required fields or required format, so it's just all about the ingest and the parsing. We don't care what's there. Where it's a little different on ServiceNow is they have required fields. So if those fields just happen to be something that app developer decides not to fill out, it stops working. Anybody else? So thank you very much for your all coming. I encourage you to go over to the pavilion to the app demo workspace, we actually have, which is shocking, we have some of our engineering team actually giving demos. They're awesome. So if you actually want to know, like under the covers, how things work, our engineering team is actually over there on those booths giving demos, which is pretty cool, if you ask me. So thank you, everyone. I'm losing my voice now.